Hi, I'm Daniel Andrews, owner and creator of the DAN Show, and welcome to my latest 2022 NFL preview video. Today, I'm going to break down the Washington Commanders. Now, if this is your first time here, I just got to ask you one simple question. Do you like football? Because if so, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button. Join the growing community of football junkies and fans over all 32 fan bases. Now, here's how these videos work. I start off with 3 things I like about the Washington Commanders, followed up by 3 things I don't like about the Commanders. At the end, I break down the schedule, go over the yearly win total odds, and then I reveal if I'm going to bet on the Washington Commanders for the 2022 season. Now, let's start off with 3 things I like about the Washington Commanders. The first thing I like about the Washington Commanders is the improved quarterback situation. Now, is Carson Wentz the long-term answer? I don't know, but I do know that Ryan Fitzpatrick wasn't. And going into the season, it looks like Wentz is going to be a starter. Heineke, who started the majority of the season, will be the backup. And then rookie Sam Howell, the 5th round pick. By the way, loved getting Sam Howell at the top of the 5th round. Really, really good pick. This is your quarterback situation going into 22. Now, is this mean that the quarterback position's set? They don't have to worry about anything? No, it doesn't. But the quarterback position in 2022 is definitely better than it was in 2021. The second thing I like about the Washington Commanders is the returning defensive players. In 2020, the Washington Commanders, or football team, whatever you want to call them, had the 4th best scoring defense. They gave up the 2nd fewest yards and had 47 sacks. Last year, they were 25th in scoring defense, 22nd in yards, and had 38 sacks. A large part of that was Chase Young and Montez Sweat missing a season basically combined between the 2 players. Now, Washington had some other defensive injuries and issues in 2021. And per an article in ESPN, Chase Young will miss the season opener, maybe a few weeks in the season, but knock on wood, he's going to play the majority of the season. They also have a lot of youth on this defense. Cameron Crowe, a 2020 7th round pick, was the 2nd leading tackler. Very pleasant surprise. A leading tackler, Cole Holcomb, a 2019 5th round pick. And then last year's 1st round pick, Jamin Davis. He played extensively during the season. So when I say returning defensive players, it's a combination of players coming back from injury and young up-and-coming players. In the past, I've seen Washington try to fix things with big splashes in free agency. Instead of doing that, they're keeping their core intact and just trying to grow from 2021, and I think it's the right decision. The third thing I like about the Washington Commanders is signing Terry McLaurin this offseason. First off, I did not think this was going to happen. This offseason, the wide receiver market just exploded. And I really thought Washington would botch this, but they didn't. Now, his numbers aren't really eye-popping, but look at the quarterback situation over the last 2 years. Multiple quarterbacks, but he still found a way to have consecutive back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Now, if Wentz ends up being the long-term solution, he ends up to reverting back to the Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, McLaurin is going to have a massive season. I mean, we could be looking at him being a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. And if it sounds like I'm hyping this guy up too much, I'm actually not. I'm kind of underselling it. I mean, we could be looking at the guy. If Wentz is the guy, McLaurin may have the best stats of any receiver. I mean, really, the sky's the limit for this kid. So just to recap the 3 things I like about the Washington Commanders. Number 1, the improved quarterback situation. 2, the returning defensive players, injury and youth. And 3, re-signing or signing this offseason, Terry McLaurin. Now, 3 things I don't like about the Washington Commanders. The first thing I don't like is that the Washington Commanders have been the worst run NFL organization over the last 20 years, really since Dan Snyder's bought the team. I will admit that I like what they've done over the last 2 years, even though they've had 2 losing seasons. Now, 2020, they did win the division. They did go to the playoffs, but they still, 7-9, it's a losing season. It's really difficult when you have a poorly run organization to get coaches. And I don't mean head coach, defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator. I'm talking position coaches, assistant coaches, people that you want to bring into organization. And plus, it's also difficult to attract free agents when you have what's widely known as one of the worst run organizations in the National Football League. Again, I really like what they've done the last 2 years. They've really added some stability. Again, 2 consecutive losing seasons, but I really like what they've done. Now, Ron Rivera is the head coach and general manager. This normally doesn't work. However, it has worked in New England. And Business 101, what do you do if you're trying to build up a successful business? Well, who's your most successful competitor? That would be New England. Copy what they're doing. So even though I like what they've done, and they've made a lot of good changes over the last 2 years, overall, over the last 20 plus, it's still been one of the worst run NFL organizations. Now, the second thing I don't like is the immense defensive drop-off in 2021. I'm fully aware that I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here, because earlier I said I like that the players that are coming back in 2022 on the defensive side of the ball. But here's the drill. They went from a top 5 defense in 2020 to a bottom 10 defense in 2021. The massive drop is a concern. If this was a middle of the pack defense last year, I wouldn't be worried about it. But because they were a top 10 or a bottom 10 defense last year, it is a concern entering 2022. But I do like the way that they're going about addressing it and fixing it. Hopefully they can revert back to that form. But this would be an issue I would be concerned about entering 2022. The third thing I don't like is their offensive line. I know I'm being mean here, but when Washington lost Trent Williams in 2020, instead of trying to get another Pro Bowl left tackle or drafting a Pro Bowl left tackle, they just kind of filled holes in the roster. Then they lose their best offensive lineman in Brandon Sheriff this year, and instead of getting a Pro Bowl caliber guard to replace him or drafting a guy. By the way, they drafted 16th. Zion Johnson was available. He went 17th. This is a guy I thought was a definition of plug and play, has Pro Bowl potential. I had him ranked significantly higher than Jahan Dotson. Basically, they just added holes, and nothing against free agents that they brought in, but they're not Pro Bowl caliber offensive linemen like Sheriff was. Bottom line, this offensive line is going to take a step backwards in 2022, and I didn't think that this was an elite unit in 2021. So just to recap the 3 things I don't like about the Washington Commanders, over the last 20 years, one of the worst run organizations in football. I really like what they're doing over the last couple of years, though. The drop-off, the defensive drop-off in 2021, and I am not fond of what looks like they're going to be their starting offensive line in 2022. Now, let's go over the schedule. I break down the yearly win total odds, and then I reveal if I'm going to go ahead and put action on the Commanders this year. I really like their schedule. Even with Chase Young missing the first couple of games, you could easily jump out to a 2-0 start. The next 5 games are pretty tough. 4 against playoff teams from 2021. Then you have a winnable Thursday night game at Chicago in week 6. Now, this is kind of interesting because Green Bay will play at home Sunday, week 6, before traveling to Washington week 7. So not only are you at play a Thursday night game, you're at home week 7, so you get a few extra days to prepare for that Green Bay game. Now, after the Green Bay game, 4 out of their next 6 opponents are on the road before a late bye. Now, I always think it's advantageous to have a late bye, but that's kind of my opinion. The thing is, after the bye, 3 out of the next 4 games are at home. And see what the schedule makers did here was give Washington a real big advantage. They play New York at New York week 13. New York hosts Philly week 14, where Washington will have a bye. Then they travel to Washington week 15. A major, massive advantage for Washington week 15. And then the final 2 games are at home. So in my opinion, this is one of the more favorable schedules in the league. I think schedule makers did Washington a real solid here. Now, the yearly win total odds are 7.5 with action heavy on over 7.5. Right now, you can get positive numbers betting under from both Caesars and Barstool, and both of them have negative 125 for the over. So if you want to bet over 7.5 wins, using Caesars or Barstool. You have to wager 125 to win 100, where Caesars currently has plus 105 and Barstool plus 103 for the under. So let's dive into 7.5 wins, and let's look at if you want to bet the over or the under on the Washington Commanders. The first thing I'm looking at is after the bye, 3 home games, 3 possible wins. Dallas could be resting starters. Don't bank on that, but they could. The second thing I'm looking at is weeks 11 through 13. Now, there are 2 winnable road games, and then you get Atlanta at home week 12. Bottom line, these final 7 games, I could see Washington finishing 4-3 or maybe even 5-2. The first 10 weeks, then a very possible 2-0 start with a winnable road game at Chicago week 6. Right, I just got you to 7 or 8 wins right there. Now, with extra few days rest for week 7, do you surprise Green Bay at home? What about Minnesota week 9? Are both Philly games losses or definite losses? Personally, I like over 7.5 because I could easily see 8 wins here. I think the NFL did Washington enough favors with the schedule to definitely have me on board with the over, but I don't like the negative 125 number. So this is a team I'm monitoring closely. I also really am paying attention to Philly and Dallas in preseason. Do they have some early season injuries for those weeks 3 and 4 games? Because if Washington wins either the week 3 game home against Philly or week 4 at Dallas, they definitely are, well, I shouldn't say definitely, but most likely going to go over 7.5. So I don't like the negative 125 number. Today, right now, I'm not putting action on the Washington Commanders, but they're definitely a team I'm monitoring and I could take advantage of later on in the year. If you stay in touch with me, I'll let you know if I'm going to put action down on the Commanders. But bottom line, folks, this is my opinion. This is what I think. I really want to hear from you. What do you think? What will the Washington Commanders do in 2022? Drop a comment below. Let's talk football. Now, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, like the video, like this awesome content, and ring the bell. That way you're notified every time I come out with a new video. Tomorrow, I break down the Minnesota Vikings, so I will see you tomorrow.